Picture this. A state spends years building some of the tightest gun control laws in the country. Politicians celebrate. Activists cheer. Millions of law-abiding gun owners are told to sit down and comply. Then one morning, 6 justices of the United States Supreme Court look at all of it, all those laws, all that political effort, all those celebrations, and say, not so fast. That is exactly what just happened. And the states that pushed hardest for gun control did not see this coming. Not a 6-3 decision. Not one that could unravel years of legislation in a matter of months. The legal foundation they built their entire gun control framework on just got pulled out from under them. I'm Sarah from GunGuidePro, 10 years in the firearms industry. And what I am about to break down for you changes everything. Stay with me through every single word. Before we go any further, subscribe to GunGuidePro right now and turn on every single notification. We are a new channel building something genuinely important here. Plain language, legal coverage of the decisions that directly affect your rights as a gun owner. Every subscriber tells us this content matters and gives us the motivation to keep delivering this level of analysis for you. 2 seconds. Completely free. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell. Let's get into what just happened and why it matters for your life specifically. To understand why this decision hit gun control states like a freight train, you need to understand the legal framework they were operating under for decades. For years, courts used what is called the means test. The government would say, we have an important reason for this law, and judges would weigh whether the law was a reasonable way to achieve that goal. The problem with that standard is enormous. It gave governments massive flexibility to justify almost any restriction they wanted. All they had to do was come up with a compelling enough reason and courts would go along with it. Gun owners were fighting uphill battles in courtrooms across the country and they were losing constantly. States like California, New York, Illinois, and New Jersey built entire regulatory frameworks on top of that permissive legal standard. Required permits, restricted firearm types, demanded waiting periods, background check systems. In some states, even dictating how guns had to be stored inside your own home. And then the Supreme Court threw out that entire framework completely. Replaced it with a standard that gun control states had never had to face. And many of them simply cannot survive. Drop your state in the comments right now. Are you in one of the heavily regulated states watching this ruling shake your legal landscape? I personally read and respond to every single comment on this channel. The court's ruling came down firmly on the text, history, and tradition standard. What that means in plain language is this. If you want to regulate a firearm in America, you must show that your regulation is consistent with the historical tradition of firearm regulation that existed when the Second Amendment was written and ratified. Not modern statistics, not current political arguments, not public safety claims that sound reasonable today. You must root your law in the actual history of 1791. That is a fundamentally different test. And here is why it is devastating for gun control states. Where in 18th century America do you find a government-approved roster of acceptable handguns? Where do you find magazine capacity limits written into law? Where do you find a government telling citizens they must wait 10 days before taking possession of a firearm they already legally purchased? Where do you find blanket bans on entire categories of commonly owned rifles? You do not find any of it, because none of it existed. The founders were not thinking about urban crime statistics when they wrote the Second Amendment. They were thinking about liberty, about the right of citizens to protect themselves and resist tyranny if it ever came to their doorstep. When the court says your gun law must fit within that founding tradition, it is saying the government's modern political agenda is not enough. And that is a wall that California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Maryland, and Massachusetts just ran directly into. Which politician in your state do you think is most responsible for building a gun control framework on legal ground that just completely collapsed? Name them in the comments. I want to see who this community holds accountable. Let me get specific, because this is where people's understanding really opens up. California has assault weapons bans, magazine capacity limits, a government-approved roster of handguns legal for sale, waiting periods, red flag laws, a permit system that functions in practice as a barrier to constitutional rights. Put every single one of those laws against the text, history, and tradition standard. Where is the historical analog? There is not one. That is California's impossible legal problem right now. New York already lost a major Supreme Court case a few years ago that forced the state to rewrite its concealed carry permitting scheme. New York's response was to restrict where permit holders could carry, creating so many sensitive locations that practically carrying anywhere useful became nearly impossible. Courts are already pushing back hard on those restrictions. This latest 6-3 decision gives lower courts even more legal ammunition to strike them down. Illinois, New Jersey, Maryland, Massachusetts. Every state that built its public safety strategy on heavy-handed gun control is facing the same uncomfortable reality. Their laws are vulnerable, their legal arguments are weakening, and the Supreme Court just made it dramatically harder to defend what they built. The government now bears the burden of proof. If a state wants to enforce a gun restriction, it is the state's job to prove that restriction fits within America's historical tradition. The gun owner does not have to prove innocence. The government has to prove constitutional authority. That is a fundamental reversal of how these cases were decided before, and it has enormous practical consequences for millions of Americans right now. What is your favorite constitutional ruling of the last decade? Heller, McDonald, Bruen, or this latest 6-3 decision? Drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know what this community considers the most important legal victory in our lifetime. I want to be fair here because good legal analysis means you look at both sides honestly. The 3 dissenting justices raised real concerns. Their argument is essentially this: the majority's approach is too rigid. It ties the hands of modern governments trying to address modern problems. Gun violence is a real issue. Mass shootings are real tragedies. And if the only tool courts allow must look exactly like something from 1791, governments may be powerless to address dangers the founders could not have imagined. That is a legitimate point to raise. The founders never imagined semi-automatic weapons. Never imagined the scale of violence we sometimes see today. There is a genuine philosophical argument that the Constitution should be interpreted in ways that allow society to adapt. But here is the counter-argument, and I think it is the stronger one. The Constitution already has a mechanism for updating itself. It is called the amendment process. If the American people, through their elected representatives, decide the Second Amendment needs to be modified, they have the power to do that. What no government official can do is ignore the Constitution as written because they find it politically inconvenient. The Bill of Rights is not a menu where the government picks which rights it respects based on current political preferences. Here is the honest reality about timeline. Laws are still in effect until courts specifically strike them down. You still need to follow your state's laws while legal challenges work through the system. This is a long game. The Supreme Court has pointed the direction, but it will take years of litigation before we know the full extent of what survives and what falls. What is your prediction? Which state's gun control framework do you think collapses first under this new legal standard? Type the state name in the comments and tell me why. I want serious legal predictions from people following these cases. Here is what you need to do right now, because knowing the ruling is only valuable if you act on it correctly. Step 1, know the laws currently in effect in your specific state. This ruling changes what states can defend. It does not automatically eliminate existing laws overnight. Follow your state's current requirements while legal challenges proceed. Step 2, stay informed about the specific lawsuits being filed in your circuit right now. Organizations like the Second Amendment Foundation and Firearms Policy Coalition are already filing challenges based on this new legal framework. Those cases are the mechanism through which this Supreme Court decision becomes real change in your daily life. Support them financially if you can. Step 3. Understand that this ruling is not just about guns. It is about the relationship between government and the Constitution itself. If the government can weaken the Second Amendment through administrative creativity and creative legal arguments, what stops them from doing the same to the First Amendment? What stops them from limiting free speech by arguing misinformation is dangerous. What stops them from watering down Fourth Amendment protections by citing public safety? The answer is courts willing to hold the line. This 6-3 decision is the Supreme Court drawing that line. Step 4. Vote with constitutional rights in mind. The composition of courts that apply this standard is determined by elections. Every election that places a justice on a federal bench has Second Amendment consequences that last decades. Here is the absolute bottom line. The Supreme Court has sent an unmistakable message. The era of courts giving governments the benefit of the doubt on gun restrictions is over. From here on, if you want to limit a constitutional right, you must justify it with history, not statistics, not political arguments. History, and that is a standard that a lot of gun control laws simply cannot meet. Gun control states did not see this coming. They built their legal strategies on a foundation the Supreme Court just removed. The reverberations of this decision will be felt in courtrooms, state legislatures, and the daily lives of gun owners across America for years to come. Here is what you do right now. First, subscribe to GunGuidePro and hit that notification bell immediately. We are a new channel, and every single subscriber gives us the motivation and resources to keep delivering this level of analysis for you. When the next major ruling drops, you will know within minutes. Second, smash that like button and share this video with every gun owner you know who deserves to understand what just happened at the Supreme Court. Third, answer all 3 questions in the comments right now. What state are you watching from? Which politician do you think is most responsible for building unconstitutional gun control in your state? And what is your favorite constitutional ruling of your lifetime? I personally read and respond to every single comment on this channel. GunGuidePro is just getting started. The cases coming through the pipeline are going to be even bigger than this one. Be here for every single one of them. Stay informed, stay armed, stay free. I'm Sarah from GunGuidePro. See you in the next one.